Hey everyone, you're here with Casey and Trey. Ho ho ho, happy holiday season. We're here today with Bugcrowd Security Flash, and today we're talking about the Hacklore Project. So Bob Lord, who's a longtime friend of both Trey's and mine, got annoyed enough about some of the, call it law, and some of the Chicken Little Kermit Hands type cybersecurity advice that tends to get peddled around this time of year to consumers, and basically created a site and an open letter debunking some of those things, kind of putting them in perspective around some of these kind of controls that we get commonly scared about as consumers, or kind of thrown at us as consumers, versus the things that are actually practically important to keep us safe. And then got a bunch of people to jump in and sign it. Trey and I both signed on to that, and we wanted to jump on and talk about it a little bit today. So Trey, do you want to take it from here?
Sure, absolutely. We'll jump in. So first, let me translate the Aussie there. Hacklore. Hacking, like hack, lore, L-O-R-E, hacklore.org is the website.
Link in description, right?
That's right. Link below. So the open letter, there's two sections. So there's some outdated advice, and then there's recommendations. And so in our run-up to this recording, we were discussing how everything we're talking about here was more important in a prior chapter. The vulnerabilities are still there. The question is it theoretically possible, and is it actually happening in the wild? One. And then number two, what are the mitigations that we need to recommend people to follow? And so very actionable. So I'll dive into first the outdated advice. So avoiding public Wi-Fi. I think we've all been told, if you're at the airport, if you're at the hotel, if you're at the coffee shop,
it's
you
a great
have
way to sell
use
VPNs
a VPN.
too.
Yes, it sells VPNs. VPNs, so more questionable parties have direct access to your traffic, right? You're transferring the risk to a questionable party. The bottom line is SSL, HSTS, cert pinning, we've come so far in both the foundational technologies and the implementation. And thanks to the crowd, thanks for the research community, we've made this a thing that folks are aware of, companies have dealt with, and for the most part, these things are dealt with. Applications are a lot more secure. Anything on that, Casey?
Yeah, no, I mean, you raise a really good point there in terms of the role of security researchers and actually finding and kind of highlighting some of the issues that we were, frankly, pretty bad at back in the day. Calling out the practical attacks that can be used to exploit, the idea of certificates not being pinned, for example, or just a lack of SSL if you want to go all the way back, right?
Right.
We're a long way from that day. And I think to your point before as well, and we'll come back to this in a second, but there are still risks associated with connecting with public Wi-Fi, but compared to the risks of some of the things that are actually recommended as what you should do, it's sort of night and day.
Maybe we should just pin in some of the recommendations behind it. I mean, we've all played with Wi-Fi pineapples. We've all done man in the middle, flipped people's images, had our lulls, had some fun.
Yep.
But when we're stealing credentials, when we're stealing sessions, there's a handful of things that can be done to deal with that. And there's one that's foundational for absolutely everyone, and that's MFA.
Yeah, no, multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication, as it's sometimes referred to. For those who are listening to this and aren't necessarily a part of our technical audience, what that is when you put in your username and password, it asks you for a third thing. So it's a code that's already on your phone. It's a key that you plug into your computer. It can be a number of different things, but the point is that there's something else beyond your username and password that, basically what that does is it mitigates the risk of an attacker being able to exploit or compromise your account, wherever that account might be, with just that username and that password. I think there's a really interesting example of this that's just popped up, and it's frankly, it's a horrible story, but it's a good kind of demonstration of, the difference between Hacklaw and practical advice is some of the things to be thought about here. Basically, it was a guy who was using a Wi-Fi pineapple to do an evil twin wireless network attack. That's basically just impersonating like a well-known wireless network and having people connect to your device that you control instead of the actual network itself. And then from there, he set up phishing pages to harvest credentials and used that to access the account of women and did a whole bunch of really sketchy stuff in terms of the content that he tried to actually get from that. On its own, that's a horrible story, and you could easily kind of translate that to don't connect to public Wi-Fi ever. But the reality of it is that multi-factor authentication being enabled on those attacked accounts probably would have made that person's life a whole lot harder. So it's not and also that kind of phishing attack, you can do that all sorts of different ways. You could deliver that through QR code, you could deliver it through email,
Or the platform
SMS,
could get
whatever
hacked
else,
and you
right?
could lose your passwords. I mean, the bottom line is the proposal. I claim to be Casey John Ellis. I have stolen his password. I don't have his second factor. Something he is, something he has, something.
And therefore you are blocked.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
So the second factor piece is there. The second piece of outdated advice is never scan QR codes. And then COVID happened, right? QR codes.
And that was such a weird time too, because I was
Yep.
very definitely on the
right.
like QR codes are bad bandwagon, and then all of a sudden we're doing zero touch. And
It's up there
everywhere.
now with don't
Freak out
click
moment,
links.
for sure.
Right.
Yeah, but it is a part of. I mean, in reality, a QR code is just a link.
That's right.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to, right?
You're losing a web
the whole,
page. Yep.
Yeah, so the whole advice of like don't click links, well, that's kind of how the internet works. So that's not good advice.
That's right.
Yeah, the better thinking there is to actually be thoughtful around what you do click on or what you do scan. And if it looks weird, then don't put credentials into it. Don't necessarily interact with it at that
If
point
you
in
didn't go
time.
directly to the page yourself, don't trust it.
Yeah.
And I think folks are fairly wary. But I think this plays into the next piece of data advice. Never charge devices from public USB ports. I mean, how many times have you been at the airport with a dead phone or,
in the back
got in the back of an
Uber.
Uber? That's right, 100%.
Yeah.
And I think the important thing to underscore is the folks that, well, one, we've never seen this actually happen in the wild. There's no public records of this happening. We've seen it at Black Hat. We know it's theoretically possible. That's been iterated on, but we've never seen it in the wild. One. Number two, if someone's going to burn their O-Day against the mitigations that are put in place to the public research, they're probably not going to burn it on you. I mean, if you're one of the Joint Chiefs or you're part of the agency or one of the Five Eyes, you're probably going to have stronger tradecraft. But the bottom line is, if you're handling sensitive systems and you've got a dedicated phone for those assets in those environments, you're going to play this a lot tighter. But for the most part, you're probably just charging your phone.
Yeah, and I think the call out that you make there, like there's no documented cases of juice jacking, as it's called, being kind of deployed against the public on a widespread basis. Like there are definitely tools that are in the hands of intelligence community members and law enforcement and different folk like that can actually exploit issues like this.
That's right.
But as you said before, like those are expensive tools. They're not going to be deployed willy-nilly. And if you are someone who has that kind of attacker in your threat model, you already know, and you're probably not really the target audience for this particular conversation that we're having right now.
Yeah. All right. So next up, let's talk into turning off Bluetooth and near-field communications, NFC.
Yeah. So this one's really interesting because I think there are reasons to do this. I think they're mostly associated with privacy and not so much around exploitation. Like again, there have in the past been exploits that can be used to like go after a Bluetooth or a BTLE stack on a mobile device or on a laptop. Again, the security research community has like done that research, surfaced it to the vendor. The vendor has responded and hardened those systems. So at this point in time, there are certain things that you can do, but in terms of like losing the utility of Bluetooth and NFC on your device for the purpose of like pretty rare and fairly valuable exploits that are probably not going to be deployed on you as a average Joe or Jane internet. This advice is basically outdated at this point.
I fully agree with that. And I think that feeds into one of the other good recommendations that we should be dispensing in our holiday travels and your, I will call it IT services under duress as you visit family and friends.
Yep.
Keep critical devices and applications up to date.
Yes.
To Casey's point, the research community has done the work. We've identified these vulns. We've worked with the manufacturers, the device manufacturers, the software, the operating system manufacturers. Mitigations are in place. We've come a very long ways. So I think it's important to remind folks, if you're patched, you're above the waterline for the majority of this stuff.
Yep. 100%. Anytime you see, the notification pop up, do you want to apply this patch now? I think the biggest thing that folk do, and like honestly, I've counted myself in this group at various points in time. You just click snooze because it's not convenient. And that window between when you receive that patch and when you actually apply it, that's a window that's open for attack. So, making it a priority, above not using Wi-Fi or not scanning QR codes, like make sure that you are applying patches. That's going to put you ahead of the pack for sure.
That's right. Next piece of data advice is regularly clearing cookies. I mean, what better to do than blow up your sessions and your already pre-negotiated, strong, authenticated relationships with web apps, right?
Yeah. And this one I think is really relevant for the folks that are on like family IT support as you called out before, right? It's, you know, like we've just come through Thanksgiving. We're going into Christmas. It's not just in the US at this point in time. It's all around the world that people are kind of getting together with their families. And if you're the resident nerd, you're going to get asked questions about stuff like this.
That's right.
You know, the first thing that happens when you recommend that your family delete their cookies is you get a bunch of angry phone calls because they don't know how to log back into the things that they've been logged out of. So like just as a, like with the IT person hat on, like that's just making life hard for them. I think any security advice that doesn't make things as easy as possible for the user is just generally inherently bad. But also, you know, frankly, the actual value of clearing cookies at this point in time, like there's a lot of that's tied to trying to avoid being fingerprinted by advertisers and different kind of privacy considerations. Like the reality there is that there are so many other pieces of metadata in your session that are also being used to fingerprint you that deleting cookies doesn't really kind of move the needle that much.
Evil advertisers have so much information and so much telemetry. They've tied it together. They've got you fingerprinted. I guess the counterpoint is, so if you're touching someone's computer because you are now resident nerd, duress tech support, of course, update the applications. But I think this feeds into the other two pieces of advice. The opportunity to, one, teach them what a strong passphrase is as opposed to a really terrible leet speak password that they've got to write down. And then number two, get them on board with a password manager. I mean, we're in the holiday season. Gifting a password manager is a great move. But what that feeds into is the other piece of bad advice, and that's constantly changing passwords. And so if you're going to go through this exercise, teach them what a good passphrase is, set them up with a password manager, and then go through and help them migrate, help them onboard, get them into that password manager.
100%. And yeah, like tying it back to why regularly changing passwords isn't necessarily good advice, it's because it encourages reuse. It's like as someone who's a family member who's not thinking about this stuff constantly or trying to stay on top of it necessarily, this is not a part of their everyday thought process. What the hell's that password again? You know what? I'm just going to reset it and use the one that I always use so I don't forget.
That's right.
That's what you end up with if you give that advice, which is
password 1, 2, 3 for the win. All the way.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Awesome. So that's the list.
That is the list. So you know, what do you think about all this? What do you think this is going to kind of have as an impact on the internet biosphere at this point in time? Because I feel like it's a really good time to have a rational conversation about risk, and that's really what I think Bob and this letter is trying to do.
You know, we've come a long, long ways. If we go back to the late 90s, early 2000s, we were all using bad passwords. Nobody had MFA outside of the government or the RSA, ACE, and TACACS and Radius servers. I mean, we just weren't there. But we had unstable operating systems that were overly helpful, that were easy to hack. And at that time, BHOs, the browser helper objects, and terrible plugins targeting Internet Explorer 4, like we've come so far in terms of hardened hardware, certificate management, crypto between our applications and our hardened devices, our ability to automatically update these things. We don't have to ship CD-ROMs to people to update. Like we've come so far. So I think it's a great point to take a step back saying, hey, for those that are afraid of technology, we've come a long ways. There's a handful of things you need to do great with. If you do these things, you're going to be okay.
And you're going to be like a lot more okay than people that aren't doing it. And when you think about the role of the attacker, it's to be like economically rational and go after the low-hanging fruit. So the goal here is not necessarily to outrun the bear, it's to outrun the other guy. And those four things really help you achieve that. So keep your stuff patched when it pops up and tells you to update, do it. Make the time and do it. Enable multi-factor authentication wherever you can. And you and I kind of talked about this a bit yesterday. Like I actually do think that starting with email is you know, I think this was your point, is like the most critical thing, because that's where all your
It's the only password I need. It's the only account I need to reset all the other passwords.
It's where your password resets are going to go.
That's right.
I think if you're on tech support for your family, talking to them about their financial services accounts first is probably going to be like a lesser lift, because they'll understand
they're motivated
impact of that straight away. But then you can pivot that off into email and social media and whatever else. So get that deployed. Use strong passphrases, not passwords, and then use them with a password manager. Those four things, and I think you're outrunning the other guy at the very least.
Should we exit with a Bob Lord quote? We work against adversaries that organize their work into campaigns. And so if we're thinking about these as humans that are economically motivated, they're working with bosses they're accountable to, we're driving up the cost and the workload by doing just these four things.
100%. Coolies. Well, thanks, Trey. This has been another Bugcrowd Security Flash. As I said at the outset, ho, 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 and happy holidays. You know, Godspeed to everyone who is on that that resident nerd tech support role over the next couple of weeks. We appreciate everything that you do, and I think Trey and I are a part of that community, so we can kind of empathize with the pleasure and the pain of doing all those things. But yeah, share the word, I think, on this Hacklaw stuff. Getting it out, Bob has put together a really kind of easy to follow website that kind of lays all of this out in a really practical way for the average layperson. That's kind of the intended audience of all of this. So share that around, and good luck with all of it.
That's right. Cheers. Well, good to see you, Casey. God bless, and safe travels to all you out there.
You too. Cheers, mate.